Good evening and welcome everybody to our second webinar in the series of 8 virtual sessions we're going to be holding this year for U16 AAA players and coaches. Welcome to those that are joining us for the first time, and welcome back to those that are joining us again. We're doing this live. Hold on, just let me enter one person. Perfect. We're doing this live, but all 8 will be recorded. So all players, parents, and coaches can go back and listen. So you're going to be sent a link to watch the video in the next day or two. So just keep an eye open for that. The benefit for watching these live, the virtual sessions live, is to be able to ask questions and be confident for the players that will be asking the questions. Be confident in the way that you're asking them. Brodie, if you can move the forward just to go over some general meeting rules. Perfect. There will just, if you can just take a quick read of these. There will be a Q&A session at the end, but if you do have a question during the presentation, you can use the chat function. I'll be acting as the moderator. So if you do have a question, just put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand. I will interrupt Brodie politely and get to your question. So when you do ask your question, if you could say your name, what team you're with, and the association. First off, my name is Scott Stevens, and I'm the manager of program and events for the Ontario Hockey Federation. It's my pleasure to introduce Brodie Barrick for our second presentation for the U16 AAA virtual series. Brodie works with the Ontario Hockey League as the Director of Player Recruitment and Player Services. Tonight, Brodie's going to focus on player development, the OHL Players First Guide, and post-OHL opportunities that are available to players. So Brodie, on behalf of the group, I want to thank you in advance for being here tonight and welcome. So I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Scott. And yeah, it's great to be here in front of this group and obviously presenting on the OHL and all that, we have to offer as a league and provide some information to our U16 AAA players on what's obviously an incredibly important year for you guys as you go through, this U16 year with the draft, happening in April at the end of your season. So like I said, it's great to be here. Some of you may have seen some of this information already, whether it be at different U15 camps or league showcases or team showcase presentations. So if you have seen some of this information before, try to take in some new information. I find, the second time you go through these presentations, it's obviously a lot of information for you to get on the first time. So it's important that you're able to take in some of that new information as well. As Scott mentioned, my name is Brodie Barrick. I'm the Director of Player Recruitment and Player Services with the Ontario Hockey League. And so really my goal and my role is to ensure that every player coming through the draft process has information on our league so that you're able to make an informed decision on what's best for you and your future. Obviously, the OHL is not for everybody, and I'm not here to tell you that the OHL is the only option for you to be successful in your hockey career and move forward, but it's important information for you to have as you navigate this year and ultimately your hockey career beyond this year as well. And so a little bit of background on myself. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up in the Niagara region in Welland, Ontario, and played all my minor hockey for the Welland Tigers growing up, now the Southern Tier Admirals, as you guys would know them. And I was fortunate enough to be drafted in 2010 to the Sarnia Sting, where I ultimately went on to spend, the best years of my hockey career while playing in the OHL. And I say that, not only from the skill level that the guys I was playing with and against, some of the best players in the world and guys that we're watching have great NHL careers on a nightly basis now. Those were teammates and competitors and opponents of mine, but also for everything else that goes into it. I was fortunate enough after my time playing in the OHL to go on and use my education scholarship package at Toronto Metropolitan University in downtown Toronto, formerly Ryerson, and continued my hockey career playing at the U Sport level. And we'll touch on all of this, how the education scholarship works in U Sports and things like that later on in this presentation. But the combination really of, playing in the best junior hockey league in the world, along with all of the other things I was able to get out of the game of hockey, is really why I say those years spent in the OHL were the best years of my hockey career. After my time at TMU, I went on to do my master's in leadership at the University of Guelph. I scouted in our league for 6 years before taking on this job. So I've been around the OHL as a player, a team staff member, and now a league staff member. And so I can speak to my experience with the Ontario Hockey League and all the benefits and things we have to offer, and can relate to where you're all at in your journey in your hockey career. And playing U16 AAA is something that you should all be proud of, and I'm sure you and your families are very proud of what you've been able to accomplish this far, and know you all have your sights and goals set on that next level and moving through this process. And so as Scott mentioned, just a bit of an overview of what we'll cover tonight. The first half, we'll kind of talk about some player development. We'll look at, what players are able to do coming through the OHL. We'll look at some NHL draft results and things like that. Then we'll talk about the Player's First Guide. This is really where we'll cover the education and scholarships, the player environment benefits, all of these things, and then wrap up, what happens after you come and spend your time playing in the OHL. So as Scott mentioned, please ask questions throughout through the chat, the Q&A function. Scott will jump in when you ask those questions. We'll make sure to get them answered for you. And so without assuming, anyone's knowledge of the OHL, I just really want to provide some high-level info right off the top. I know these words and pictures might be a little small, and so we, like Scott said, we'll send these out to you so you're able to review it and read through them afterwards. But really, at the end of the day, the OHL, we're a proud member of the Canadian Hockey League, which is the world's largest development league. We have 60 teams across our 3 leagues, the Western Hockey League, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League out east, and then, of course, the OHL here in Ontario. The CHL as a whole is the #1 development league for youth sports, which is Canada's university hockey, as I mentioned. Canada's national amateur teams, so at the U17, U18, and our under-20 World Junior levels, and, of course, the NHL. And so, our 20 teams, 17 of which compete in Ontario, 3 out of the U.S., you can see a little bit of a breakdown there as to where our teams are located. And we show this map to show, we're incredibly fortunate with the travel that we're able to have in our league compared to a lot of other junior hockey leagues. Our travel is very minimal. Of course, there are some longer road trips, but looking back on my time, some of the best moments are with your teammates on the bus and things like that. And it's a great experience and a great atmosphere. So our goal as a league really is to provide our players with the best on and off ice experiences possible, and that'll be outlined through this presentation and specifically as we go into the Player's First Guide in the second half. And just before we dive into the player development side of things, we like to share, really our guiding principles of what we do at the OHL and how we operate. And so these pillars here are really what we stand for, and ensuring that we put our players first in all aspects of what we do. And so quite often in the U16 year, you hear the debate, do I want to go to the O or do I want to go to school? School obviously being the NCAA route. Coming to the OHL doesn't mean that you're just focusing on hockey all the time, and there's no focus on school. And we're proud to develop student athletes as evident through our CHL scholarship program. Like I mentioned, that we'll touch on a little bit later on. We're guided by player safety, ensuring that, the first thing that comes to your mind is probably that a player is taken care of if they get injured on or off the ice. But player safety goes a lot further than that. It's ensuring that our players have the supports and resources necessary to ensure that they're safe in all aspects of playing in the OHL and everything that goes into that. And then lastly, playing a leadership role in player development, allowing and pushing our players to go as far in the game of hockey as, their talent and their commitment to the game allow them to. But also playing that leadership role in player development is developing good students, developing good teammates, good young men in our communities. Again, it goes a lot further than just the on-ice development side of things. But speaking specifically about the on-ice side, we'll start here. And so this first kind of half of the presentation, we'll talk about the results. So what players coming through our league have been able to accomplish, what we've been able to accomplish as a league. And we'll go into some draft stats and things like that here shortly. But first, we're just going to play a quick little video for you before we dive into it.
My time in the OHL allowed me to prepare for life as a professional hockey player at a young age. The development opportunity players are provided by playing in the OHL is unrivaled. Support systems teams have in place help players immensely once they get to the next level. With the coaching, skill development, facilities, and attention the OHL provides, I believe it is the best hockey development league in the world.
So a pretty good spokesperson to hear it from. Obviously, most could argue that he's the best player in the world right now. And that's a guy who at a very young age is an exceptional status player, came into the OHL, obviously had, the raw talent and the drive to be the best player in the world. But those important years from 15 to 18 for Connor McDavid were spent playing in our league, and he was able to get that development to obviously go on and be the world-class player that he is now. So statistically speaking, we are the #1 development league in the world, and it's evident by some of these draft results that we'll talk about. And so dating back to 1969, really the inception of the NHL draft as we know it, our league's had over 2,500 players selected in the NHL draft. This is by far the first in the world. It actually represents roughly 20% of all NHL draft picks over this time period. So for, as I mentioned, our league of 20 teams, to have roughly 20% of all NHL draft picks when we know all the different development routes, 3 major junior leagues in Canada, junior A leagues across Canada and the US, and other options. It's pretty remarkable stat to have that many players drafted out of the OHL specifically. And, looking back that far obviously doesn't mean a lot to you guys in your U16 year here. So we looked at it a little more closely over the past 10 drafts. You can see there, where the OHL ranks and our first in the world in total number of players drafted, first and second round picks, number of forwards and number of defensemen drafted, and then not too far behind there in goalies as well. All of this to illustrate, when you hear Connor McDavid say that it's the best path for a player to take to get to the NHL, we also have the stats to back that up, and you can see the numbers there in terms of the players being drafted and where they come from. And then to illustrate it a little bit more, exactly where the players being drafted are coming from. As I mentioned off the top, the OHL is a part of the CHL, and so our 2 other partner leagues, the QMJHL and the WHL, we each have specific regions and areas where we're able to draft players from, and players are eligible to go to each league from. And we do that so we're not stealing and fighting amongst each other, and we're all, competing to make the CHL the best brand as possible. And so for the purpose of this slide, we have the CHL draft stats on here versus some other options. And you can see that, dating back to 2013, about 40% of players in the NHL draft have come specifically out of the CHL. There's no other category up there that really comes close. And you look at the rest of the world category on the far side there, you can imagine all the different countries that go into that, whereas the CHL, you're just looking at mainly Canada with a few US teams included in that as well under the same umbrella. And then, of course, we break it down. I'm here from the OHL, speaking specifically about the OHL. So I'd like to show where we rank when you break our 3 leagues out from the CHL umbrella. You can see again there that no single development league produces more NHL draft picks than the OHL does. And again, this is dating back to 2013. So just looking specifically where the players are coming from over this time period, just under 400 players drafted out of the OHL. Again, first in the world, and allows us, anytime you say you're the #1 in the world at anything, it's quite the bold claim, but we have the stats to back it up that we are the #1 development league in the world, especially when you're talking about players, being drafted in the NHL draft. And then again, just to look at it a little more closely, shrinking the time frame that we've been talking about to the last 5 and the last 3 NHL drafts, again, right up there in first and second round picks, just fall a little bit behind the WHL over these time periods, but again, leading the way in total number of draft picks. I don't think I need to remind anyone in this room that a few years ago, no one in Ontario played hockey, and obviously, our number of high-end picks took a little bit of a dip then with that COVID shutdown year and not playing at all. We're poised to have a really strong draft this year coming up with a lot of OHL talent projected to go in the first round. We're certain that will continue next year and beyond as well, and we'll see that gap get back to where it was prior to the shutdown and see us leading in the way, not only in total draft picks as we still do, but also back on top in those first and second round draft picks as well. And so obviously being drafted to the NHL, I'm sure there's a lot of your goals in here, to play in the OHL and then move on and be drafted to the higher level. But being drafted isn't the only way players are able ever to make it to higher levels. That's true at the OHL level. That's true at the NHL level as well. So we spent some time looking at NHL training camps from this past year that just, took place in September, October there. Our league sent 160 current OHL players off to NHL training camps. The CHL as a whole had 325 total players at NHL training camps. And you can see the breakdown on the screen there. The players who went from OHL and our current OHL players off to NHL training camps, kind of the breakdown. 98 of those players are drafted to the NHL. But 62 of them were free agent invites. So like I said, just being drafted isn't the only way to get to that higher level. We see every year players being invited to training camp as free agents. And on a yearly basis, we're seeing free agents signing NHL contracts and moving on to play at that higher level. Each of our teams in the OHL sent at least 2 players to NHL training camps. We had 3 teams who actually sent 11 players, which is an incredible, high number of players. And all 32 NHL teams welcomed at least 1 OHL player to their training camps. And so not only is it a great league for drafted players, but NHL teams like our pro length of schedule, 68 games, is the closest you'll find to the pro atmosphere. And these are the players that, as a young player in our league at 16 or 17 years old, you're going to be competing with, every day at practice, in games. You're going to be competing against teams with NHL draft picks and players signed NHL contracts. Who better to learn from than these players and compete against on a daily basis to help with your development as well. And so again, as I mentioned, just because you're drafted to the NHL doesn't guarantee that you're going to go on and play games at the NHL level. Just like being undrafted doesn't mean that you'll never go on and play in the NHL either. So we looked at the past 5 seasons, and the OHL has averaged 25% of players on NHL opening day rosters. So a few slides ago looked at, roughly 20% of draft picks all time have come from the OHL, but the number of players actually playing games in the NHL on opening night rosters is higher at 25%. Again, just echoes that we are the #1 development league in the world. And when we look specifically at this year, again, you can see the trend there, just under 200 OHL alumni on NHL opening night rosters. That had us sitting at exactly 25% of the NHL this year had come from the OHL. This is something we're proud of. At the end of the day, going on and playing games in the NHL is that ultimate goal, even more than being a draft pick and all of these things. And so to have a quarter of the world's greatest hockey league come from just the OHL is something we're proud of, and continuing to strive to keep that number there and push it higher on a yearly basis. So that's it. I know that's a lot of stats and numbers to throw at you at almost 8:30 on a Tuesday night, but I appreciate obviously you being attentive to that, and it's great numbers for you to know about our league as you go through this process. That was the results side of things. This next half, we'll talk about our Players First Guide, and this is really how we're able to achieve all those results. So I'm going to play another video here, and then we'll chat about that video before we dive into the Players First Guide.
Hi, I'm Matthew Maggio, right wing for the Windsor Spitfires.
Well, when you talk Spits, you talk the leading scorer in the OHL. Maggio has been outstanding. I think he's going to be the league's leading goal scorer by the time the season's done.
Off to the side, now Morneau. Back for Maggio, shot!
My path to the OHL was playing in Windsor until I was 12. Growing up, my dad was actually a trainer for the Windsor Spitfires, so ever since I can remember, I was running around the old Windsor rink, hanging around and buying time while my dad trained the guys. So I then played for Sun County, and I got drafted 5th round to the Ottawa 67s.
86th overall pick in 2018 by Ottawa originally before being traded to the Spits.
Pass across, they score! Matthew Maggio's first Ontario Hockey League goal!
The former 67 who spent a short time here in Ottawa, is leading the OHL in scoring.
We knew Matt as a young player growing up in this area, the work ethic. He was an elite player as a minor hockey player, was the Alliance Player of the Year. The Ottawa Hockey Club was smart enough to select him, and then when we brought him here into Windsor, we knew he had some ability, but to see where he has taken it and his work ethic is second to none. And to be quite honest, we're not surprised at the success Matt's having.
Yeah, it was something definitely surreal. It was the middle of the summer, and I just remember getting a phone call from my agent saying that I got traded. And obviously, when you get traded to a hometown team,
They got to go to their newly minted captain, a New York Islander prospect, Matthew Maggio.
Playing for his hometown team, named captain now of his hometown team. A very cool honor for that young man.
And Maggio, the captain, back to the middle. Maggio fakes the pass and then puts it on goal. He scores! Maggio, his league leading.
Matt's just an unreal kid, both on and off the ice. He's well liked by his teammates and his coaches, and real easy decision, local kid that gives back to his community. We're so proud of Matt, and we expect nothing but the best for this young man.
being a captain here is obviously unbelievable. It's such a storied franchise, and the captains that they've had before me, it's just an honor to be up there with them.
And so there's a few reasons why we like to show that video, and we'll talk about two of them quickly here. The first one, Matt last year finished his overage season in our league, so his time in our league is done now. But last season, he scored 54 goals, led the OHL in scoring, signed an NHL contract with the New York Islanders, who drafted him a couple of years before, and was named the winner of the Red Tilson Trophy, which is given out every year to the OHL's most outstanding player. Matt was a fifth-round pick to the OHL, and so I think that's something that gets overlooked all the time. People say, well, if he's not a first-round pick, how good can he really be? And people compare themselves against each other all throughout the year, and you might think, you're a little bit better than someone who got drafted higher than you. Really, where you're drafted and the overall pick that you're drafted matters for one day, and that's on draft day. From there, it's up to the player, to go into training camp and earn their spot on a team. And then once you make the team, earn your ice time and take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you. Matt's obviously a great example of someone who was, picked in the fifth round and went on to have not only a great OHL career, but ultimately going to have a great pro career here as well. And then the second reason, Bill Bowler, Windsor's GM, in the video obviously talks about how good of a player, in addition to the team, Matt was from a hockey perspective, but he also spends as much time, if not more, talking about how good of a teammate Matt is and how good of a leader he is and how good he is in the community. Again, really goes to show and illustrate we want the best players playing in our league, of course. That's why we are the best junior hockey league in the world. We also want the best people and students and individuals in our league as well. So it goes a lot further than just the on-ice part of it. And so, really the hallmark of the player experience is our CHL scholarship program. So what this program provides, as I mentioned off the beginning, I was fortunate enough to use my education package afterwards to get my degree. It provides that players who play in the OHL receive 1 year of tuition, books, and fees for every year played in our league. The dollar amount of your scholarship package is based on the university that's closest to your home residence. So for me, as I mentioned, growing up in Niagara, Brock University was the closest university to me. My yearly scholarship amount that was waiting for me after my time in the league was based on Brock's tuition, books, and fees. But that's flexible for me to use anywhere in the world at any recognized university, college, trade, or technical school. I didn't have to use it at Brock, as I mentioned, I didn't. And so that's for me to use anywhere. There's only two stipulations that would void the education contract. The first would be signing an NHL entry-level contract, and the second is not accessing it as a full-time student within 18 months of your junior hockey career ending. These are legally binding contracts that you sign There's no way for the team to, drop you down to 50% of what they agreed to pay your scholarship afterwards, or change how many years they're going to pay on a year-to-year basis like some other routes can. These are legally binding contracts. What you agree to and what you sign on the day you sign your contract is what's waiting for you afterwards. And the program also provides that, the teams will pay for these costs of post-secondary tuition, books, and fees while playing in our league. And so we have examples of players who are able to complete university or college courses while playing in the OHL. They're able to use those courses to get a head start on their degree afterwards. And that's all above and beyond your scholarship that you've earned and is waiting for you afterwards. Our teams all have dedicated academic advisors and tutor support for players on our OHL teams to ensure that, on the chance that you have to miss a game for a road trip or something like that, that our academic advisors work with the team and the school to make sure our players are staying on track and not falling behind in the classroom, which is something incredibly important. And we highlight that 86% of our games last season took place between Thursday and Sunday. So we are a weekend league. And again, that goes to that last point about making sure that our players are in the classroom as much as possible, and on the times that they do have to get pulled out of the classroom, ensuring that our academic advisors are working with the player and the team to make sure that you're up to date on your studies. And so, as I mentioned, these scholarships are flexible and may be utilized anywhere in the world at any university, college, trade, or technical school. And when you're looking at just last year alone, over 330 OHL alumni utilized their scholarship package. Over 200 continued playing hockey at the U sport level. And this contribution financially by our teams just last season alone was over $3.5 million. So it's obviously a huge amount of money that our players invest in our alumni's futures, not only from an on-ice perspective, but in your education and off-ice as well. Students and players are also able to earn scholarships at these institutions afterwards. All of those are also above and beyond anything that's in your OHL scholarship package. And so if you get an academic scholarship from the university or college or wherever you go, that's all additional money on top of what the OHL pays for your tuition and all of these things. And so as we move on here, I'm going to play one more quick video here just to kind of cap off on the education side of things.
The Bobby Smith Trophy is presented annually to the OHL Scholastic Player of the Year, presented by Dairy Farmers of Ontario. The trophy is awarded to the player who best combines high standards of play with academic excellence. This year's recipient is draft-eligible Owen Sound attack forward Colby Barlow, who achieved an overall average of 93% in grade 12 studies at Owen Sound District Secondary School.
Throwing it to the net, backhand shot, Barlow scores!
Barlow enters the 2023 NHL Draft as the top-ranked skater from the OHL, finishing the season with the club leading 46 goals and 79 points over 59 games.
Fed back across, Yeager, wrist shot, tip back in front, score! And there is Colby Barlow doing what he does.
He led the OHL with 12 game-winning goals and is currently representing Canada at the World Under-18 Hockey Championship in Switzerland. Barlow becomes the first Owen Sound player to ever win the Bobby Smith Trophy.
So this video is from last June at the OHL award ceremony. As it mentioned, Colby Barlow, the winner of the Bobby Smith Trophy. Colby ended up being the 18th overall pick in last year's NHL draft to the Winnipeg Jets. All while, like you heard, achieving a 93% in his grade 12 studies in his NHL draft year. Went on to compete at the U18 level with Team Canada. So he's a great example of someone who is maintaining high levels of both education and hockey at the same time. And goes back to that point at the beginning, about developing student athletes. That's not an OHL versus NCAA thing. We obviously take great pride in developing student athletes, and Colby is a great example of that, obviously. So the first half, we talked about player development and showed a lot of stats and all of these things. This slide here, we'll talk about, the people around you on a daily basis that have that day-to-day hand in your development as a player. And so, whether it be our full-time experience, general managers, head and assistant coaches, goalie and video coaches, athletic therapists, strength and conditioning coaches, all of the things you see on the screen here and more that our players have access to on a daily basis. And a lot of these individuals either have experience at higher levels, whether it be, Hockey Canada and the World Juniors or in the professional ranks. When we talk about being the #1 development league in the world, of course, we're talking about that from a player perspective. We're also a development league for all of these individuals as well. And so that's why I don't think you'd be able to find at the junior level a collection of individuals with as much experience or who will go on to higher levels like you would in the OHL and the CHL as a whole, of course. And so we're incredibly fortunate with all of these people that will have that day-to-day hand, like I said, in your development as a player right from a young age once you come into our league. And probably the most important slide we'll talk about, especially for the parents in the room tonight, is the player environment. And so I think at the OHL, we're proud of what we're able to provide for our players in this area, and also always ensuring what we're able to do to continue pushing these efforts forward. And so, as I mentioned, my role as Director of Player Recruitment and Player Services is to oversee all the different supports and resources and education pieces that our players have available to them. And by no means is this an exhaustive list of all the programs and supports our players have, but to highlight a few of them so that you can see, the emphasis that we put on these areas. Our mental health support programs for our players. We have partnerships with the Canadian Mental Health Association and the Talk Today program, a workshop that our players and staff members and teams go through each year on mental health awareness and suicide prevention in all of these areas. We also have a partnership with Heroic Minds, which was created by an OHL alumni, Ben Finelli. It's really, the Spotify of mental performance. And so our players and staff have access to this. You can see our drug education and anti-doping programs, respect in sport programs, the OHL onside program. These are things that, not only are done at our level, Hockey Canada takes part in some of these things as well. And, the learnings and education pieces are, of course, great for the young players coming into our league and being able to utilize while playing in our league. They're also, pieces you're able to take with you and lifelong learnings that you'll be able to apply to your life outside of hockey as well. And I think that's the best part of some of these things. It doesn't only, help you while playing in the OHL, but some of these things can help you for the rest of your life as well. And we say all of that to illustrate, these programs are put into place to ensure that every player coming into our league, whether, you're the first overall pick or you're an undrafted free agent, that all players are welcomed into a healthy environment, and ensuring that all players are experiencing not only the OHL, but the game of hockey on a broader level the same way. Everyone should have the same player environment experience when you're playing in the OHL and look fondly back on these. And so that ties into, having a zero tolerance for any hazing, diversity, or harassment and bullying issues, which leads into our policies on diversity and gambling and use of social media. When we talked about player safety at the beginning of the presentation, this is the areas that I was talking about, that our player safety goes a lot further than just on the ice. It's in the classroom, on social media, and ensuring that our players have the supports and resources necessary to be safe in all aspects. And then player benefits, questions we get a lot, obviously, but our players, all the best equipment that's available on the market at a given time is provided to the players at no cost to them or their family. The family would incur no additional costs for anything, obviously equipment, but the expenses that are paid for billets, monthly expense allowances are provided to cover, gas and travel to and from the rink and things like that. All of these things are taken care of by your respective team. Our players also receive $1,000 annually for off-ice training and skill development. We know now more than ever, hockey is really that 12-month sport. I feel like you guys wrap up your season and you go right into training for the next year already, whether it be on the ice with skills camps and development sessions, or in the gym and different training camps that you guys do in those senses. So all of our players get that $1,000 each off season to be able to put towards that. And then lastly, I mentioned it a little bit there, the billeting program. Junior hockey, we don't operate the way we do without all of our billets in our local communities. And these are really the families that take our players in and give them that home away from home experience, and ensuring that you have what you need, meals and house set up and all of these things. And so you'll spend more time with your billets than you will with your own family throughout the course of the hockey season. And so our teams do a great job ensuring that it's a good fit for you and you're comfortable and have all that you need to be successful, both on and off the ice. And then just a couple more things before we wrap up here. I mentioned off the top, much like U Sports, which is Canada's university hockey, Canada's national teams and the NHL rely on the OHL and the CHL as a whole to develop all of their future players. We rely heavily on, our minor hockey system, specifically in Ontario here, to develop our future players. And so we're proud to support our minor hockey partners through various different events, but obviously the OHL and OHF U15 Programs of Excellence, which many of you would have been at, and it's great to see you back here. Obviously, providing information at seminars like this for the OHF, but also through our OHL Combine and OHL Cup tournament that take place every year. And I know you guys all, I'm sure, have the OHL Cup circled on your schedule and are fighting down the stretch here to earn your spot into that tournament and try to replace the junior Canadians on there as last year's champions. These are all things that, like I said, we're proud to have our name behind some of these events, but also provide financial support and human resource support to help our minor hockey partners execute these events and ensure that our young players in Ontario at the minor hockey ranks are getting the development that they need to be able to come on and be OHL players someday down the road. And then just lastly, before we wrap up, we get the question quite often. So I come to the OHL, then what? And so we spent some time over the last 5 seasons tracking just over 700 players who have played in the league and graduated and gone on to do other things in hockey or beyond. And you can see the breakdown there. 47% of our graduates over this time period went on to play pro hockey of some kind. Now, of course, it doesn't mean they're all playing in the NHL, but 33% of them did sign an NHL contract. Again, they could be playing at a various level of pro hockey, but are signed to an NHL contract with their team. 14% signed a pro contract of some other kind, whether it be the AHL, ECHL, overseas in Europe, or some other league. And then just over 51% of our graduates went on to access their scholarship that we talked a little bit about in quite depth earlier in this presentation. As I mentioned, you can continue playing hockey at the U Sport level. I think U Sport, so Canadian National or Canadian University Hockey, is one of the most slept on leagues, definitely in Canada. It's a lot of ex-major junior players who continue their career, and the quality of hockey is very high. And we're seeing now more than ever players come through the OHL, go on to the U Sport ranks, and sign a pro contract afterwards, all while having their degree completed and paid for from their time in the OHL. So 2 great paths that players are able to choose what's waiting for them and after their time in the OHL. I don't even like referring to the U Sport scholarship option as a plan B, because it's a really great plan that a lot of people would give a lot to be able to be fortunate enough to access. And so, of course, all of you in the room now, I'm sure, are hoping to be part of that top number, and you should be aspiring to be a part of that group. But at the very least, kind of a worst case scenario, to have an education paid for and waiting for you afterwards is a great place to be. And so, again, I know that's a ton of information to kind of have thrown at you, like I said, at 8:30 on a Tuesday night, but I greatly appreciate all the respect and the attentiveness that you gave tonight. I think we'll throw it back over to Scott here for some Q&A. If there are any questions or anything, of course, my contact info is on the screen there. So if you can't think of something tonight or think of something afterwards, you're more than happy to reach out any time. And like I said, I'm here to be a resource for all of our players as you head through your U16 year and into the draft and hopefully into our league one day soon. So please definitely utilize me as a resource. That's my job. That's why I'm here, to meet families and players and help with this process, as it's new for most of you going through it. So please lean on me as much as you need to. And thanks again for tonight. I'll pass it back to Scott, see if we have any questions here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Brodie. That was excellent information. So I will open it up to the group if there are any questions. I have a couple that maybe I can get the ball rolling, but I'll kind of open up to the floor if there are any questions right off the bat. Okay, so I'll ask the first one. Brodie, what happens if my son is drafted but doesn't make the team right away as a 16-year-old?
It's a good question. It's something we get, I think, quite a bit. To preface that, we talked about it being the best junior hockey league in the world, and it is for a reason. It's tough to jump in as a 16-year-old. We don't see a ton of players each year jump in right away, and so it's good to be mindful of what could be the path next year. And so really the best thing for your development is you need to play games, and whether that be at the OHL level as a 16-year-old or junior B or back at the U18 level, all of these are great options, and your team who drafts you will work with you or suggest some options or be open to hearing and empower you to find a spot to play for next year. But like I said, at the end of the day, playing games and getting a lot of reps and touches is important, especially at that young age. And we're seeing a lot of guys. Easton Cowan's a great example of someone who was drafted and played a year of junior B, gets called up to London and plays a few games, and then spends a full season with the London Knights, ends up being a first-round pick in last year's NHL draft, and was obviously on the World Junior team this year as well. And so he's not the only one. Oliver Bonk's another example of a guy who took a year to play junior B, and I think it might be tough for some people right away to hear that you might need a year of junior B before you're ready for the OHL, but we're seeing how that propelled those guys both going on to be first round NHL picks and then representing their country at the World Juniors. And so the long way to say the teams want what's best for you as a young player. They've obviously drafted you and they've invested in you, and so they're not going to do anything that's going to be harmful of your development. And so they'll work with you or be open to the options that you provide them on where you think and everyone collectively thinks is best to play as a 16-year-old.
Thanks for that, Brodie. Are there any questions? Any other questions? Okay, maybe I'll ask one more. I know that you spoke about the scholarship package, and I'm not sure if you referred to this or not, but I just wanted to ask the question. What counts as a year played for the scholarship package?
Yeah, so how it works, and by contractual terms, that's one game played before and after January 10th. For simpler terms, it's really one game played per year is what counts as your year of scholarship. And so it's not that you have to play in all 68 games or play in 50 of 68 games. It's really, that one game before and after the January 10th date that counts as your year played.
Okay. Oh, we got one question. Perfect. Melissa, did you want to ask your question to Brodie? Go ahead.
Mute.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. It wasn't coming off mute. Thank you.
Yep.
Just a little bit further to what you said about the one game played in the OHL counts as part of the scholarship package.
Yeah.
Is there anything that would stop or limit them to getting it? So, for example, if they're playing junior B and they get called up to play into the junior A team, are there any stipulations going from the junior B team to the junior A team that would limit them getting the scholarship? package?
No, so we have players who are on like affiliate cards. So they're signed to play junior B or junior A, but are able to come up and play a certain number of games with their OHL team in that season. And again, once that player plays their game, that's what counts as their year of scholarship. So they're able to get called up and play, whether it be 1 or 5 games in a season. That would count as their year played.
Even if they go back to their junior B team and
Yeah.
continue. And I could have been wrong in hearing this from others, but something about emergency players. So if you get called up to the junior A team as an emergency fill or something like that, and then you leave the junior B team and you continue on the junior A team, that limits your scholarship?
No. So any time
Okay.
that you play a game, obviously you would be signed to a standard player agreement, and that's what triggers your scholarship. And so, yeah, you could come up and play, 1 game and go back down, and come up later in the year and play another game or whatever the case may be. Once that, like I said, you sign that contract and it's agreed upon, and that's your legally binding contract that they can't get out of afterwards. So yeah, there's no limit.
And there's no coming up to play without signing something. Like you sign something as soon as you go up to the junior A team, even if it is the 1 game.
Yeah, they would typically sign you right away to that standard player contract. There are some instances where you could technically play a game without signing. I think you can play up to 3 games without a contract, but our teams, for the most part, would sign a player right away.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for asking.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Great question. Anybody else? Okay, I'll have one. Maybe we can close out with this question, Brodie.
Sure.
You played and scouted in the league before taking the job that you currently have with the league. Why do you feel like it is the best path forward for a player?
Yeah, I think, it might sound cliche to say, but it's really the best of both worlds. You're not only playing in the best development hockey league in the world, as I mentioned, against and with the best hockey players in the world. You're also getting an education scholarship that's unmatched and unrivaled, really, by any sports league in the world. Like we talked about, how extensive and what you're able to get out of the OHL scholarship package, in addition to playing in the best junior hockey league in the world. I don't think there's really any league or any path that can compare to that. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, I not only played and worked for a team in our league, but now work at the league level. So I may be a little biased in my perception of that, but I really just I don't think there's other paths or options that are able to provide our players on the bigger picture is pretty much everything we talked about in this presentation tonight, a better opportunity to pursue hockey at the highest level and also get the education and off-ice skills, the different resources and learnings that we talked about as well. Altogether, I'd be surprised if there's something out there that offers a player more than what we do.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that, Brodie. Seeing as there are no more questions, we'll kind of close it off for this evening. I just want to first and foremost thank Brodie for his time tonight on behalf of the group, and also like to thank those that attended this evening. Like I said in the intro, this has been recorded. And we will be putting it out probably within the next day or two, and it will be available also probably within a day or two on our website as well. And like Brodie said, if you have any questions at all, his contact information is there. My contact information is on the OHF website as well. So if you have any questions, that you think of after the presentation is done, feel free to contact us. And thanks again, Brodie, and have a good evening, everybody. And hopefully we'll see you guys back for the next web series, which is next Wednesday night with Andrew Hoff. So thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.